After many delays due to chipset shortages and of course the current US trade bans, the Huawei P50 Pro is finally here, and even though there is no set global launch date yet, I've managed to get my hands on one here in China quite early. I have the Kirin 9000 powered Huawei P50 Pro with me here today, which reflects the prices in the top right hand corner. I'm not too phased about having the Kirin 9000 chipset variant since it's still an incredible powerhouse, but I am pretty bummed that none of the P50 series devices have 5G connectivity, thanks once again to the current US trade bans. The P50 Pro has topped the leaderboards in terms of display and optics on DxOMark, and I have no doubt that it will deliver. With the return of the monochrome camera and refined punch hole notch, the Huawei P50 Pro has a lot to offer. Without the support of 5G and Google services, the P50 Pro has to truly outperform in other areas, and I am extremely excited to see if it does. And if so, has the legend truly been reborn? The Huawei P50 Pro comes in 4 different color variants. You can pick it up in pearl white, charm pink, golden black, or the version that I have, which is indeed cocoa gold. It looks absolutely phenomenal and shimmers from all different angles. This one doesn't change color on different angles, but it does shimmer in the light quite a fair bit and has quite a bit of reflections coming off of it. Slap on that cheap cover that you get in the box, which is indeed silicone. It takes away some of its flair, but it's good to have on day one. Though the back is absolutely phenomenally stylish, I must say that that camera module looks a tad bit like a stove. We have a 4360 mAh battery under the hood with 66 watt wide charging and 50 watt wireless charging, a Kirin 9000 CPU with a max clock speed of 3.13 GHz, LPDDR5 RAM, UFS 3.1 storage, IP68 dust and water resistance, 4G unfortunately, Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth 5.2, and of course NFC. Unfortunately, no Gorilla Glass this time round thanks to US sanctions once again, though we do have protected glass from Huawei themselves on the front and back, and of course an aluminum frame splitting the two apart. It is just 8.5mm thick and just 195 grams in weight. We have a 13 megapixel ultra wide sensor alongside a 50 megapixel custom made main sensor, a 40 megapixel monochrome main sensor in order to get more depth in terms of detail and of course bokeh effect as well. And last but not least, we have a periscope telephoto camera, which is indeed 64 megapixels. Comparing it to the likes of the Galaxy S21 Ultra on the left hand side and iPhone 12 Pro Max on the right hand side, the P50 Pro in the middle looks slightly more saturated than those two, but it does indeed have quite a bit more depth and doesn't look as flat. When taking a picture of my camera over here, once again, great depth. You tell me which one you think looks the best. Moving on to ultra wide, all of them with very similar megapixel counts over here, I must say that the Huawei actually seems a tad brighter than the rest of them. The S21 Ultra has 108 megapixel sensor, which we're using here at full capacity. The Huawei has a 50 megapixel sensor, once again using at the max megapixel count in this photo, and the iPhone is sticking to 12 megapixels since there is no option for pixel binning. When binning down the shots, the Samsung drops down to 12 megapixels but bins 9 to 1 times, and the Huawei drops 4 to 1 times down to 12.5 megapixels. Once again, the iPhone cannot be pixel binned down. You get a slight haze effect when looking at the clock at the center over here on the Huawei device, which is slightly apparent on the Samsung, but not apparent at all on the iPhone. The reason why I zoomed in the first shot by just 2.5 times is because the iPhone's telephoto 12 megapixel sensor kicks in at 2.5x optical zoom. The Samsung and Huawei are sitting at digital over here, which is why you can see slightly more detail on the iPhone, though I must say that the two on the left aren't doing a bad job in terms of digital zoom. Zooming in by 3 times since the Samsung's first telephoto camera kicks in at 3 times zoom, the Huawei is still sitting at digital over here, and the iPhone is using the telephoto camera but going all the way to digital zoom since it surpassed its 2.5x mark. Looking at the quality over here, you can clearly see that the Samsung is picking up a tad more detail than the other two. Now jumping up to an odd 3.5x zoom is because we have a periscope camera on the Huawei P50 Pro. This is actually a 64 megapixel camera, binned down 4 to 1 to 16 megapixels. It is shooting at optical zoom right now, where the other two two are sitting at digital zoom, and once again you can see the detail shine through. It is not only brighter, but once again picks up light a tad better than the Samsung, though the iPhone tends to pick up slightly warmer colors. And jumping into 10 times optical zoom on the Samsung here with its second telephoto camera, which is indeed a 10 megapixel periscope camera, it actually tends to be slightly more washed out when compared to the Huawei P50 Pro. The iPhone looking the worst over here. I must say that even at 10 times digital zoom using the periscope camera on the Huawei looks fantastic, and that is because it is using a 64 megapixel sensor, whereas the Samsung is just using 10. Taking photos at night over here, well, during the day, but I closed the door and all the curtains. The Huawei with night mode off looks like it is truly lit up. It's night and day between it and the other two devices over here, and when switching night mode on, the Huawei actually looks a tad worse than the other two and worse than its previous shot as well, where the others tend to brighten up the shots a lot more compared to their previous photos. They're just as bright as the Huawei, however they have slightly more detail than the Huawei, though the Samsung is starting to pixelate. We of course also have 4K 60 FPS video on all three devices here with optical image stabilization, and I must say I'm pretty darn impressed with the Huawei, but the iPhone is still the king of video. Of course, the Huawei also has a monochrome sensor, and I just had to take a picture of my PC using it. The Huawei P50 Pro is an absolute champ in the camera department, and I cannot wait to seriously deep dive into it in my full review. We have a power button on the right hand side, next to that a volume rocker. At the top we still have an infrared blaster, alongside that is the first dual stereo speaker and another one at the bottom of the phone. We have a USB Type-C 3.1 port, and we do have dual SIM 4G over here, and you can expand storage up to 256 gigs. The selfie camera has switched from the top left corner being in a pill-shaped notch rather for a punch hole notch at the top center of the screen in favor of better aesthetics, but we are losing 3D face unlock over here, and the selfie cam is capped at 13 megapixels with an aperture of f2.4. Taking a selfie snap over here in great lighting conditions, you can see that the Huawei looks slightly more washed out when compared to the Samsung and the iPhone. And when taking a look at a portrait shot over here, I must say that the Huawei has absolutely near to perfect edge detection, and the background blur looks so much more natural than the other two over here. The selfie camera may not be the best in the business, but it certainly does a fantastic job nonetheless. Booting up the P50 Pro for the first time over here and listening to its wonderful jingly tune, we are welcomed to HarmonyOS 2.0, Huawei's own made software. They say that it is completely their own foundation, though it is truly a fork of Android's open source code. It looks absolutely fantastic, and it looks kind of like a mix between what iOS and Android has to offer together. You can make folders bigger so that you can just tap on icons instead of having to go into the folder, but there is no form of Google services. However, Google Board does work, and the Play Store doesn't work, of course. Chrome doesn't work. Chrome Beta doesn't work. The Google app, of course, doesn't work either, but YouTube does work. Unfortunately, you can't sign in. You can use that YouTube app with the incredible hardware that this phone has to offer, including a QHD to Full HD somewhere in between resolution, 6.6 inch OLED 20:9 curved display with 450 pixels per inch, 1 billion colors, HDR10, 900 nits of peak brightness, a 120 Hz refresh rate, and 300 Hz touch sampling rate. The 120 Hz refresh rate has an option of being used in a dynamic scenario where it can jump between lower frames and higher frames in order to preserve battery life, and feels ridiculously smooth. It's good to see it bump up from last year's 90 Hz panels. The Huawei P50 Pro is a stunner in terms of display and optics at the back. I cannot wait to deep dive into both of them and compare them to a fleet of different devices around. Make sure to like, subscribe, and smash that notification bell so that you are notified as soon as my full review drops, which should be in the next few days. This is TechNick, and I'll catch you in the next one.